Well, thank you, Jamie, and thank you all for taking time from your morning to be here. I'm very appreciative and excited. I'm a bit nervous too, because a lot of my friends are here. It's so weird. Like now that I'm talking to in front of so many friends, I feel a little more nervous. But why am I here? Why me? Why do I have to talk about justice? When I first got approached about doing this, I was super excited. And when they gave me the theme, I was like, oh my gosh, that's big. You know, talking about justice is such an important, crucial thing for human existence, and so I was like, okay, I need to start from the beginning. Let me go and Google some stuff, and so I went on and look up for the definition of the word justice, because I have my excuse. English is not my first language. And so, and it says, justice, the establishment of determination of rights according to the rules of law or equity. And those two last words were kind of crucial for deciding what we're going to do and how we're going to go about this. And so, yeah, and then I decided that what I want to do is just basically just tell my story. We rarely, minorities, immigrant women, Black women, we rarely have the opportunity to really tell our stories from our perspective and this everyday life, how we live our lives, how we exist in spaces. And so I want to do that. And Jason, he very generous little slideshow with different things, different events that I have gone to, just my life, basically. And how I got here to like here today, well, my husband drew us, but to Lexington. It is a very interesting story. So once upon a time in a faraway land, this very charming, handsome, smart American archaeologist came down, and we met 3.5 months after we met. We got married. 20 years and 3 kids later, and here I am. So, yeah, and where I'm from, like Jamie said, I'm from Honduras, and I'm from a family of 6 children. My father, he was the descendant of slave people that were brought to the Caribbean and later exiled to the coast of Honduras. He belongs to a group they're called the Garifunas. And I come from a mother of indigenous descendants, native Honduran. And actually today mark 18 years ever since I said goodbye to my mother. She died at the young age of 47 years, and she really was one of the people who shaped me, like many mothers. But my mother was particularly remarkable because she was uneducated. She couldn't read or write. She never had the opportunity to attend school, and she was one of 17 children. And she was an entrepreneur. She was able to put us through school almost by herself, trying to make up for my father's absence. And she not only did that for us, but she did for many other children. She had the initiative or starting taking care of children of women who work in the sweatshops, because in the 80s, when the factories came, there was really not a system in place to care for the children. So all these people moved from the countryside to work in the sweatshops in the city, and there was nobody there. There was no plan on what to do with the children. So usually after school, many kids in our little town, they will come to our house because my mother was always there. And so she cared for these children. And up to today, there's so many kids who will speak about how my mother changed their lives. And for us, people refer to us as Isabel's kids. It's a big deal, to be Isabel kid. It means something. And actually, we named our first child Isabella. How original are we? but she goes by Bella. But yeah, we named it because I was 6 months pregnant with Bella when my mother died. So yeah, my mother has really defined my life as a mother, as a creative, as an entrepreneur, and just as a human being. And another person who really shaped my life was my grandfather, my dad's father, who I actually met when I was 7 years old. He didn't raise my dad, but one day out of the blue, he came to see us, and it was like, okay, this is your grandfather. And the reason why he was there, he had come before, and my mother knew him, but that particular time he came, he was in his mid-60s already, and he came in, it is a tradition with the Garifunas, the children or the grandchildren or children of the community will help the elder. And he came because he said, well, he's getting older, he and his wife, and he would like for one of us to go live with him. And I always been like, yeah, I'll do it. And so I went and moved across the country to live with this grandfather who I'd never met before. And he was a Catholic deacon, so he had a really important role in the community as well, because the Garifuna people are mainly Catholic. And so he was always involved with things, and he will take me around to everything that he did. He will introduce me to people, and I will get the same respect that he got from people that we met. And so I always felt that I was just part of something, part of great things. And he made me read the Bible so many times. I mean, I've read the Bible, I don't know how many times, at least 6 or 7 times entirely. But always was some particular chapters. There's some good stuff over there. If it doesn't be taken out of context, it's very educational. I recommend I recommend it heavily because he had a huge influence. And I'm not now a super religious person, but I always think of some chapters in particular that it got my attention growing up, that I always analyzed it a lot. And this one in particular that it says, before I form you in the womb, and this is Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctify you, ordain you ordain you a prophet to the nations, and sanctify you. I set you apart. And that was just something else. I was a little kid, 7, 10 years old. That always got my attention, and I think of the terms of nations and places, and I always imagine myself going to places. Being outside of Honduras, go and see the world. I had this curiosity. And, we didn't have access to TV when I was growing up, so I didn't have this idea. There was all these places that you can go, and we were extremely poor. The whole idea of this having a summer travel, anything, and it was really not something that we were familiar with. But I was curious, and so, yeah, and I lived with my grandfather until I was about 12, and then I had to go back to live with my parents because where I was, where he lived, it was a very remote area. There was almost anything in there. There was no electricity, running water, and school only went to 6th grade. So I went back to live with my parents, and then is when I started working in sweatshops. Just like everybody else that I knew, that was basically the only option that you have as a teenager or a woman. And so I did that, and my sister, and my brother, and it was everything that you have heard of. It was a hostile environment. There's a lot of pressure. We worked 7 days a week from 7 a.m., sometimes 9, 10, 11 p.m., and we get paid $30 a week. And sometimes we couldn't get up to go to the bathroom because if we haven't met the production for that day, we had to stay set, because if you don't produce, you just get replaced. People just are brought up, in and out like completely disposable. But I never thought much about it. That was just survival. That's what you do. You don't have options. That's what your life is like. You have to do what you gotta do to survive. So it was not, not much about it. But after I met Chris, and I was there working in the factories until I finished high school, and I graduated with associate degree as in accounting, which I hated it, but I had no choice. I've always been a creative person. I'm not a numbers person, but I had no choice, so I studied that, and I tried to find a job, but I didn't have connections. I didn't know people who owned companies or people who knew me, who knew people who had access to potential employers. And so I applied, I swear, like 100 different places, but I never got a call. And so I decided to go back to live with my grandfather in this remote area, and that's where I met Chris. And then I came to Lexington. When I first got here, I couldn't speak English to save my life. I don't know, something funny in the screen. I couldn't speak any English, but I started taking classes and started working with Chris the first year and a half. We worked together, and he was my interpreter, but it was exhausting. Sorry, thank you. But so after I found out that I was pregnant, and so we started to create a plan, because with my skills and my limited English, if I was going to work outside the house, it really wasn't gonna make enough to be able to make any money. I was just gonna be away from my child. So I stayed home and started doing sewing because I knew how to sew. I went to a sewing academy when I was 13, and I always loved to sew. I always was a creative person. So you get to meet somebody who met me when I was a kid. That's all I did all the time, was create clothing. Always, that was my to-go activity. And so I started doing sewing for people, and that grew into be something really big. And one time, when Chris started working at Transylvania University, he invited me to come to talk one of his classes about my experience of working in sweatshops. And at first I was like, why I don't want to talk about that? Because, every other woman who come from Latin America to here to the States probably had work in the sweatshops. But it's just your life. It's not a big deal. Everybody else that you know has done it, and that's it. But it's like, no, that's very important information that I feel that you need to share. So I started doing some research about the conditions all over the world, and the profits the companies made, and it was really upsetting. I was just upset and mad and angry, and I realized that basically what I was exposed is modern day slavery. And it's happening all over the world in developing countries. People are being forced to live these lives and lose all this potential, human potential, because this unjust system of oppression. And so I became just more involved in different things. I joined the Central Kentucky Council for Peace and Justice Board, and it's a local organization that focuses on education and advocacy. And I started learning from them, like what kind of things that you can do, how can you organize, and how can you really change, or try to push for change. And that was one of the things, but I also have my creative side, and I started to try to figure out how to get involved in the local art scene. But at that time, it was a long time ago. There was not really so much of this concept of Lexington being a place for fashion. So there was nothing. And so, okay, I'm going to do my own thing. And I organized a little show. And, it was good turnout. And it was something in a small gallery downtown. But after that, I wanted to do something bigger. So I got in touch with Richie Wireman, who was a friend of a friend, and asked him if we can collaborate. And so he's like, yeah, sure. And so what we did this series of photos of some of my dresses. And then we were going to do an exhibit with the photos and then the runway show at the same time. And before the date of the show, I did a fashion show at Transylvania University because the students there, the anthropology club, had started Fair Trade Week, and that was like right in my alley, fair trade. And for those who are not familiar with the concept, it's literally like fair trade, with people are paid fair wages for whatever they make, and you get a product that that has standards, very high standards for the environment, and so yeah, that's what fair trade is. So the Anthropology Club started this Fair Trade Week, and they invited me to come and do a fashion show. And there I met a girl who has changed my life too, and her name is Sarah Jane Estes. She's an amazing designer. She's now in Louisville, and I asked her if she want to be in my show or that I was putting together. And she was like, "Yeah, sure." Then I met Laverne Sobieski's daughter over here. Laverne is over here. She has become like a huge mentor for me and a big supporter, and just overall amazing. And so I invited her, and at that show also at Transy, I met another girl, Jamie McIntosh, who did clothing from recycled material. I invited her, and another friend from Atlanta who's a designer. I called her, and she's like, "Yeah, I'll come down." She came down, brought all her stuff and her mother. And they had a little article, and many people started calling me. I think Lamin was in that show too. Yeah. And so people started calling me, "Yolanda, were you in that?" Yeah, so your daughters and everybody. So before we knew, we had 15 designers that were part of this show. And it was at the old Busters, the old building before Buster was Busters. So it was this warehouse. It was just nothing in there that had even bathrooms. And we had all these people there. We ended up having over 50 models. And another friend who had done a dress for a pageant, it's a makeup artist, and I asked her, "Can you help with makeup?" And she's like, "Sure." I mean, she brought a crew of makeup artists and hairstylists. There come these people with their boxes, and I was like, "Man, this is legit. I guess it's so exciting." Because they came over there, set out their stuff and started doing makeup. Even Coco Jackson, Renee Jackson's daughter, was show a collection. She was 8 years old when she showed a collection in that show. And so we had over 300 people to show up for this fashion show. And from that, after that, we were just all so excited. And we formed the Lexington Fashion Collaborative with It sounds good. Okay, thank you. A nonprofit that I directed for several years. And during that time, we did a lot of events, a lot of fashion shows and photo shoots, and even a group of girls started a magazine. I don't know if you remember More Magazine, seeing around town. So there were all these things that were happening. And as they were happening, it was a lot of work and never really much of it. We just did and went, and I was very happy. I feel like I have found my place. I found something that is really exciting and valuable for myself, and at the same time feel that I was doing something not just to present fashion. And like I said at the beginning, telling one's stories and using words to express is so valuable. And Laverne had told me that how you can use so many mediums to seek justice for yourself, to tell your story. And so the way that I found is fashion to be what it connects me with people, what allows me to for justice for other people as well, because there's so many people in here who, because of the system that of mass production and fashion, really don't have the option to do what they love. And so there is this quote from Dr. Martin Luther King that I really love, and it's that threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So how this system that is set in developing countries also impacting people's lives here, and I found through the collaborative, all this talent that exists here. At some point, we had a network of over 70 designers who are here in Lexington, from jewelry designers, hat designers, clothing designers, textile artists, and people who want to work in this industry. And also, during that time that I was with the collaborative, I got to work with people from 30. Yeah, this represents Lexington, all the people that are here. Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. Here? Okay. So that's what, when I was preparing this talk, I thought, yeah, that's how we reach for justice. And then the paragraph that Jamie was reading, also, there was a section in there that is talk about innovative solutions are brought to the forefront. So there is so many ways that we can achieve justice for people. And sometimes, you have to really step out. Most of the time, you have to step outside of the traditional ways that you think that justice is being served. And with my work in fashion, I have not only seek justice for myself, because I still feel that, my teenage years were wasted and something just was unfair. And there's so many girls up there in the world who are still going through that. But this work is hard because we are battling so much injustice daily in our daily life, and injustice that is being pushed by such a great forces that it takes a toll in your life. And it's not easy. It shouldn't be. Being a fairly decent person shouldn't be that hard. But it is. And what I wanted to do, there have been moments and times in my life where it really has been very difficult to go forward. And one of those particular moments was after the campaigning in 2015 started. That was a really dark time for me and for many people around me. And I could see so much darkness coming, and how so much injustice was going to be pushed on some people. And I kind of shut down. I didn't want to be a part of anything, so don't go look at my Facebook post between 2015 and 2017. I was upset. I was really mad. And honestly, I want to be honest, and honestly, I was particularly mad with white women. I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so betrayal and so disappointed, because I felt that we were so close, to have the female president, and it matters so much, because the policies that happen in the United States impact the rest of the world. And so I kind of like, I just want to do, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just of energy, it's a loss of cost. And I kind of, just went into hide. And if you work in the art world, nonprofit world, you know that the jobs, so the positions are on the hands of white women. And I was just, became a person full of no's. I would get all these emails, they want to participate in this, I was no. Don't talk to me, I'm mad, and that was my attitude. And then at some point I realized, like, wow, this is what is happening to me. And I know that we can get so upset and so aggravated and so angry. And the reason why I became aware of what was happening to me is because I met this lady who had just come to the United States with her 2 daughters, and they were so full of excitement and energy and positivity, and it kind of brought me back to life. You know how sometimes you meet people and they say, you've done so much for me, but it's totally the opposite. It's they doing you so much good, and that will happen to me. And so lately, I have tried to really be more up there, and you probably have noticed, a lot of my friends are here, that I've been more present and trying to really come back with the message of positivity, because there's so much suffering, so much injustice in the world, that we have to grow daily. The work against injustice has to be daily. There is not enough just to think that, I'm going to donate this amount of money to this organization. You have to push farther than that. And I used a quote that my husband, to finalize, something that my husband always say, when, like in a relationship, if you think you doing enough, you're doing, how it goes, if you're doing enough, you're doing the minimum. If you think you're doing too much, you did barely enough. So we have to really push harder, and that's what I want to try to do forward and encourage you all to be courageous because, like I said, the work for justice is not easy, but it can get easier if we all work towards. And it's so crucial. There is so much going on that we have to try harder. So thank you for your time, and I hope that I can do better in the future. I hope that I don't get as angry as I used to be. I really hope, because being angry and being scared is a total waste of energy and human potential. So I encourage you to try for justice in your everyday life. You have some kind of power, some kind of ability to change the world. You just have to figure it out how to go about it and ask for help, because it's always been something that's been great for me. And also be a mentor, encourage kids, let be a part of what we're doing. If we're creating a future for them, they should have a word on it. Thank you all so much. Enjoy your day, and I can take a couple of questions, I think. Yeah, thank you. Oh.